As I mentioned in my first video about SpaceComm 2022, just the scale of everything that was done here and all of the things that I discovered technologically, capability-wise, everything came as a complete shock to me. And if you haven't watched the first part of this series, please stop the video now and go back to the first part of the SpaceComm exhibition, which is listed right here. In the meantime, let's go ahead and check on what's going on with the UK and their ambitions of building up a tremendous launch cadence. And I am not exaggerating when I'm talking about 30 launches per year. And by the way, that's not from the whole country, that's from a single spaceport. How the hell can they possibly accomplish all of this? We're gonna find that out, along with a whole lot more about European spaceflight in our final episode about SpaceComm 2022 right now. Of SpaceForge, and we are going to be discussing some of the background of the company. I'm going to be paying a visit to these folks very, very soon in the next few days. But so tell me, first of all, thank you so much for speaking with me today. So in regards to what's happening, with SpaceForge, where'd you start out? Who came up with the idea of manufacturing things in microgravity inside satellites?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really neat. I mean, I'm so honored to be working on it. We have Josh, our CEO, and Andy, our CTO, are kind of the geniuses behind everything that's going on here. They actually started out of a garage in Bristol. And so, Andy is our technical genius. He was kind of working on all these kind of different ideas to do with commercialization of space. And SpaceForge just happened to be an idea that kind of came from his brain. And so, Josh is kind of the guy who makes everything happen. So he said, Andy, okay, plan it all out, and then I'll pitch it to a bunch of people and see what we can do. And here we are, about 4 years later, I think now.
That's it, just 4 years.
Yeah, we're quite young.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what led the company to go to Cardiff? Why Wales?
So I mean, like I said, we were originally in Bristol.
Right.
And so when that was out of a garage, so it was very informal, kind of, it was over the lockdown, so didn't really know where we were going with it. And so when hunting around for, where our first facility could be, we considered England, we considered Scotland, but I mean, we came upon Wales and reached out to Welsh Government, and they provided us with loads of funding support. Development Bank of Wales were some of our first investors, and so, really exciting. They helped set us up with a facility, and right now we've actually outgrown that facility that we moved into a year and a half ago.
This quickly? That's impressive.
Yeah, we've gone from about, 2 to 45 now. So we were 2 people, I think, 2.5 years ago, and now 45. So
wow,
it's good.
So yes, you have some representatives of the Welsh government about. I've noticed. So have you found them to be extremely supportive? Then
extremely supportive. They come along to all the space events and they invite the companies along. I mean, I myself, I've been to a few space events with them, which has been great. They've offered us the opportunity to speak to ministers. They've showcased us wherever they can. They're one of our biggest supporters, and so we're very grateful to be Cardiff based and to be able to have them kind of at our doorstep.
Last question. I hear that your CubeSat's still in the clean room. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, but it's all ready to go.
I would love to see it. If I'm hoping, fingers crossed, just pass the word along that we would love to see that. And if not, at least perhaps some stock footage of it.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to come and visit you folks.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you, and I'll see what we can do. I'll maybe pull a few strings.
That would be wonderful if you could. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate your time today. focusing on UK applications and such, Where do you see UK spaceflight heading right now, given that we have multiple launch providers like Skyrora, Orbex, we have Spaceport Cornwall, and that whole thing happening? I mean, where do you see this going?
The whole space ecosystem in the UK is incredibly dynamic at the moment. It is thriving. You can, just see around you from the whole atmosphere of SpaceComm, where we are here today in Farnborough. There's a lot going on. Why? I think it's driven by a strong government belief and underpinned by government policy, which sees space as a driver and a facilitator for growth. And the government is intent, quite rightly, on making space, one of the key pillars where it can achieve its policy aims of prosperity, of levelling up, and indeed of maintaining the UK's position as punching above its weight as a science superpower.
Right.
So I think the UK, at present, is a great place to be doing business in space, both upstream and indeed downstream.
Now, your former PM, well, as of yesterday anyway, Boris Johnson, he had stated an ambition to capture 10% of the world's space revenue, private space revenue. Now, a two-part question. Number one, how feasible do you see that being? And number two, do you think that Liz Truss will continue with that directive?
Well, it's probably easier to answer the second part first,
okay,
which
ahead,
is
by all means.
It's probably too early for this new administration. We can't tell. But what we do know is that with the backing of the Department for Business and the UK Space Agency, the UK is making tremendous strides. It's got these strong policy documents. A lot of people are asking, okay, what's the funding looking like that is going to underpin this? But we are quietly hopeful that this administration is moving in the right direction. Why? Because of the pledge to cut taxes. So if you're a big international company like we are, anywhere that has a very high-skilled, high-value workforce, proven capabilities and low taxes is clearly a good place to do business and a good place to invest. So that's, the first point, let's say. And also, if the government is going to make pledges to invest itself in a sector, then indeed it's going to attract, good, high-quality players.
Right.
So from our point of view, as a good, high-quality player and the biggest domestic space company, Airbus feels that it's in a strong position to not just do good for us, but to do good for the UK. And I think this is where we're really, really keen to our message is, we're not just the big, established space player.
Right.
We want to partner with new entrants. We want to encourage the UK supply chain. We want to get to know these SMEs because we recognise that we can't do it all. But we're the facilitator that we think the government needs as the big sort of gravity, as it were, the big player to encourage new developments. And so, so Airbus has a strong place, we have a strong strategy, we're engaged at all levels of government, and we want to make the UK the best place in the world to do space business.
All right, guys, I'm here with Thomas Clayson, who's with Magdrive. Is that correct? I'm embarrassed to say that I really don't know much about you. You're a new company, is that correct?
Yeah, no, we've been operating just under 3 years, about 2 years in earnest since we raised our seed, based in Harwell in the United Kingdom, about midway between Oxford and Reading. What we're doing is developing the next generation of spacecraft propulsion. So this is propulsion to maneuver spacecraft around when they are in space.
Right.
Initially looking at very small spacecraft, but eventually moving to the big boys as well. Our system is very unique in that it provides an extremely high level of thrust, allowing spacecraft to be extremely maneuverable while also being very efficient. This is absolutely crucial as we move into this new paradigm of space, where we go from thousands of spacecraft to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of spacecraft over the next 5 years or so.
Right.
The amount of collision avoidance maneuvers that spacecraft will have to do is going to skyrocket.
Yes.
Chemical systems are not well suited to do that at the moment because they're going to run out of fuel far too quickly, and so we need to rethink how we approach propulsion. And that's where we come in. We have enough thrust that we're able to do these sorts of maneuvers, but at a 10-fold improvement in specific impulse. Which exactly. So we're operating at 2,000 seconds of specific impulse compared to about 200 for a chemical system.
Is this an ion drive then, or is it something
It's
else?
similar to like a pulsed plasma thruster. So we have a pulsed power system which we use to vaporize a small amount of metallic propellant into a plasma which is shot out through a magnetic chamber to generate our thrust.
Wow, that's different than a lot of the other types of. I mean,
Yeah.
you've heard about some of these next generation propulsion systems for some of the smaller probes that we send out, that sort of thing. But honestly, the pulse plasma, I only hear that discussed more in science fiction than in reality. So it's
Well,
good to hear.
Yeah, I mean it's very real stuff. I mean, pulse plasma thrusters are actually quite an old technology, but they've not been very successful because in the past have been relatively inefficient. What we've developed is a significantly improved way of generating that plasma in making sure that we vaporize exactly the right amount of material and giving us much more control over that. Coupled with the advance we've seen in modern electronics allows us to massively increase the power, and this allows us to basically just pump a hell of a lot of plasma through a very small device,
Right.
allowing us to achieve a much higher thrust than you would with, say, a Hall effect thruster.
So for applications for this sort of thing, I mean, beyond the fact, obviously you've talked about the fact with greater ISP, of course, comes greater collision avoidance maneuvers, that sort of thing. But for example, there are a number of companies that are sending out kind of CubeSat interplanetary probes and that sort of thing. Also, like Virgin Orbit, for example, is talking about going for a next generation type of propulsion for their upper stage instead of chemical. Is these the sorts of applications that you're looking to capture?
Yeah, so those are quite two quite different applications, I'd say. For the interplanetary side of things, we're extremely well suited to that. As well as offering an extremely high thrust, it is a variable specific impulse device. Because we're able to have a very fine control over how we use our propellant, we can change the amount of energy in our pulse power system, and this allows us to operate actually from anywhere from about 1,600 seconds up to maybe 4,000 seconds of ISP. Yes, and that puts you in the kind of interplanetary range, which is really exciting. In LEO, you're probably looking at more like 2,000 seconds. Beyond that, there's diminishing returns of savings. For upper stages, you're looking at a much higher level of thrust.
Right.
Probably a lot more than we'll be able to achieve with our initial products, but who knows about the future. One area where it would be extremely interesting for like the launch market is in the last mile delivery. So your launch vehicle will often drop you off at like say 500 kilometers or maybe a bit lower, but they're going the extra distance to get to say 1,200 kilometers or wherever you wish to be, or even changing out your inclination if you have a whole constellation which you want to cover the whole planet with. That's something which our system will excel at.
Wow. Once again, I did not expect to come here and find somebody talking about next generation propulsion. Very exciting. I wish you all the best in what you're doing. So we are here today with Scott Hammond from SaxaVord up in Shetland, where they're going to be sending up some polar orbital shots, I believe. But
absolutely.
Tell me more about that. What's your mission, your goals?
So we're building 3 launch pads with 3 integration hangars, and we're aiming for a launch cadence of 30 a year. So that's what we've got planning permission for.
That much? 30
a year, absolutely.
You just blew my mind.
Yeah.
I can't believe I just heard that.
Yeah, a mixture of suborbital and orbital.
Right.
We've got up to 7 different clients at the moment. So you're looking from Astra, ABL, High Impulse, C6 Launch, Skyrora. All of these people are coming to us, and they come to us because of our location.
Yeah.
Space is all location, location, location. So we've got that really high latitude, but equally our launch trajectories are direct. They don't go over land,
Right.
They are direct, so we get the maximum payload for the minimum buck into space. And so that's what we're all about. We're a private company.
Right.
All the money has been raised for, for us walking the streets of London, and doing Dragon's Den and all of that sort of stuff, or whatever it is is it the Shark Tank over in the States? That's the one over in the States. Yeah, you go. So we've raised all the money, and we're very much going to operate a spaceport as an airport. So the companies like Sky Aurora will only pay for what they use.
Gotcha.
So if they're in the integration hangar for 3 weeks, they pay rent on being in for 3 weeks, which means they don't have to cover the capital cost of building all of that spaceport.
Wow.
We've designed it around having that high launch cadence. So the whole site's about 87 hectares. So for the UK, I know that's not big for the States, but for the UK, that's a big site.
Yeah.
So we can spread things out, so we can have concurrent operations. So ABL can be operating on their pad, not launching, but they could be, and Skyra on their own pad, and then on launch days it would be slightly different. But so it's all about rapid access to space at an affordable price.
So how did you get this idea? I mean, these islands,
I know.
as close to Norway as they are. To Scotland,
absolutely. Our closest railway station is Norway.
Norway,
yeah, exactly.
So who came up with this idea to
So Frank Strang, our CEO, and his wife Debbie, who's here, they'd bought the old RAF station up at SaxaVord. It used to be a radar site, and they'd been running it as a hotel and tourist destination.
Right.
About 5 years ago, the UK Space Agency had a report written, which is called the Scepter Report, which was looking for the best location in the UK, it has to be North Scotland, for a vertical launch site. And on the third paragraph of the executive summary, it said the best place by a factor of 30% is SaxaVord in the Shetlands. Now, the fact is, we owned it and go, okay, we'll start looking at that. Our background's all military aviation or civil aviation, so we understood a lot of that side of stuff. And since then, we set the company up. We started to go to companies like Sky Aurora. They were one of the first to actually come to us and say, "You're the site." But we had Ariane come over, and they looked at us and said, "This is a great location."
So even Arianespace is interested.
Yeah,
really?
absolutely.
Wow. Well, that's very exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big fish.
So you get somebody like them coming and you think, okay, we really do have something here.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Takes time, especially with COVID. Get the money, get planning, do the design. We got the Pathfinder launch, which is the UK Space Agency. So that was originally at Sutherland Spaceport, and Lockheed Martin decided they needed to move it to us. So we spent a lot of time on that, and we got the Pathfinder launch, which will be going next year. So that again got us more traction. We then got the likes of Astro wanting to come to us, German companies. We've got Polish companies coming to us. So we just build success and success. Now, not all of those companies will be successful.
No.
We de-risk it by having a number of different companies.
Sure, and they just rent out space. And
they just rent out space.
That's amazing.
Exactly. We're not airfield at the rest of the time, but we'll operate like that.
Okay.
We've also got ground stations. So we earn money from ground stations. We've got a ground station site on the island, and we're rolling out around the world, like Finland, Falkland Islands, and that sort of thing. We also own all of the accommodation. So when people come up, we're feeding them and all of that, which means that we've got all different income streams.
Yeah.
And if you work on an island, you can't just have one job. You've got to have different income streams. And so that again is our whole business model, is to have all those different income streams, particularly with launch, which is peaks and troughs.
Yes, exactly.
So we need to blend it out. So that's how we're sort of operating. But it's incredibly exciting at the moment. The people coming to us, there's a massive excitement here in the UK about launch, and it's going to be that first launch next year, orbital launch from the UK,
Right.
it's going to look really sexy. I love the guys at Cornwall, but a 747 getting airborne,
Not quite the same thing.
not quite the same
No,
thing, is it?
is.
Yeah, as seeing a rocket go.
Who do you think's going first? You think it's going to be Skyrora or ABL? Who's gonna go first?
I'm keen for them to compete against
Yes,
each other.
which they are.
Yeah, to get there, and we'll help whoever gets there first.
So this is how you achieve a launch cadence of 30 launches per year from a single spaceport. You have this many different small sat launch providers operating out of the same spaceport from a wide variety of different countries. Obviously, Skyrora and ABL, these are the big names in the industry, but there's going to be a lot of others, including folks like Astra. In spite of some of their shaky beginnings, at least they're going to give it their best shot from this location. Once again, trying to operate from polar orbits. That's very important to that company. High Impulse out of Germany and many others. This is a model for success, in my opinion, because as was said during the interview, not all of these launch providers are going to be successful. Not all of them have a tremendous amount of financial backing, but I have every confidence that at least some of them will be successful, and that's all that's necessary in order to maintain the lifeblood of a spaceport. And as you also heard during the course of the interviews, it's not just about rockets, it's also about next generation technology and next generation propulsion, all coming out of the United Kingdom. And I foresee some very exciting things coming before I pay my next visit to the SpaceComm 2023 convention, or indeed when I pay a visit to SaxaVord Spaceport, hopefully within the next few weeks. So in the meantime, stay tuned to my coverage, and as always, stay angry about space.